When I first bought those 200 acres, it was nothing but open sky, whispering pines, and a creek that sang at night when the breeze rolled through. I built the cabin myself. Rough cedar walls, a screened porch, and a sturdy dam at the edge of the creek to keep the water flow steady year-round. It was my little slice of heaven, and I guarded it like a dragon guards its treasure. Every document was signed, stamped, and filed with the county, the deed, the water rights, the easement agreements. My land, my rules. 5 years overseas had changed me. The work, the chaos, the endless travel had made me crave the quiet even more. So when my plane touched down and I loaded my old Ford with supplies, my only thought was of that silence, fishing at dawn, the sound of loons in the evening, maybe a little whiskey by the fire. But as I rounded that final bend on the dirt road, my jaw locked. My land was gone. Or at least, it looked that way. Rows of neatly built suburban homes stretched out where my meadows once bloomed. Perfectly manicured lawns, paved streets with curbs, and rows of mailboxes, each numbered and painted in identical black. A pristine white sign arched over the new entrance, bold black letters gleaming in the sun. Welcome to Willow Creek, a premier HOA community. I killed the engine and just sat there, gripping the steering wheel. My eyes traced over the landscape, disbelief settling into fury. Every inch of ground where I'd hunted deer, where my grandfather and I had camped as a boy, was paved over with identical houses and ornamental trees. I climbed out of my truck, boots hitting the gravel hard, and stared. The neighbors waved politely, their smiles awkward, like they didn't quite know who I was. Kids zipped down the streets on scooters, shouting and laughing. For a second, I wondered if I'd taken the wrong turn. Maybe this wasn't my land. Maybe I'd gone crazy. Then I saw the old oak tree. My oak tree. It leaned slightly over the creek, its roots dipping into the water, the same tree I'd carved my initials into when I was 17. And behind it, barely visible through the rows of houses, was the roof of my cabin. The fury that had simmered inside me flared to a boil. I barely noticed her at first, the woman in the wide-brimmed sun hat, oversized sunglasses, and a clipboard clutched like a sword. She strode down the middle of the road, her heels clacking against the pavement, barking orders at a man painting a fence. "Excuse me," I called, walking up the edge of the street. She stopped, tilted her head, and gave me the kind of look you reserve for something you scraped off your shoe. "Can I help you?" "Yeah," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "What exactly are you all doing here? This is private land." She blinked once, slowly, like I'd said something absurd. "Sir, this is a private community. If you're lost, you'll need to turn around. There's no public access here unless you're a resident or a guest." I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "Private community, lady, this is my land. I own every acre from that oak tree to the ridge line. Been mine for over 20 years. Something flickered in her expression, not fear, not even surprise, but irritation. Like I was a stray dog barking at her gate. "I think you're mistaken," she said crisply. "Willow Creek is a legally established HOA. We've got the permits, the county approval, everything. If you have concerns, you can bring them up with the board, but for now, you're trespassing. And you can't park your truck here, it's blocking the emergency lane." The audacity almost knocked me backward. Trespassing, on my own land. I clenched my fists, knuckles white, and forced a smile that probably looked more like a snarl. "Fine," I muttered, climbing back into my truck. "We'll see about that." The drive to the cabin was like driving through a nightmare. My gravel road was gone, replaced by asphalt and cul-de-sacs. The meadow where the deer bedded down had been flattened and stamped with cookie-cutter homes. And there, at the far edge of the property, my cabin stood, weathered, a little overgrown, but still standing. I parked, stormed up the porch steps, and dug through the old lockbox I kept tucked under the floorboards. Deed, survey maps, water rights, every document I'd ever filed with the county, signed and notarized, proving that this land, and the water feeding their perfect little lawns, belonged to me. I sat there for hours, the papers spread across the old wooden table, piecing together what must have happened. Somewhere along the line, someone had made a mistake. Or maybe they thought I'd abandoned the land. But no one had called me. No one had written. They'd just built 35 houses, an entire subdivision, without so much as a knock on my door. By the time the sun dipped low, painting the sky in streaks of orange and purple, the rage in me had crystallized into something cold, sharp, and unshakable. They thought they could erase me. They thought they could roll in, build their perfect little world, and pretend I didn't exist. But they'd forgotten one thing, the dam. The dam I'd built with my own 2 hands still sat upstream, holding back thousands of gallons of water. It was the only thing they hadn't touched, probably because they didn't even know it was there. And that dam gave me leverage. I poured myself a drink and stepped out onto the porch. The creek murmured below, the water smooth and steady, reflecting the sliver of a rising moon. Down the hill, I could see porch lights flicker on, hear the faint sounds of dinner dishes clinking and televisions humming. They wanted to pretend I didn't exist. Fine, but they were about to remember. And when they did, it wouldn't be with polite waves or fake smiles. It would be with the sound of water roaring through their streets, a reminder of exactly whose land they were standing on. I didn't sleep that night. Not a wink. I sat on my porch with the old lantern flickering beside me, staring at the dam through the trees, replaying everything in my mind. Every home they'd built, every inch of my land they'd stolen, every smug word that woman, Karen, as the neighbors whispered, had said to me. By sunrise, my decision was made. I wasn't going to call the sheriff. I wasn't going to hire a lawyer. I wasn't going to sit in some dusty courthouse for years while they argued over zoning issues and eminent domain. No, this wasn't going to be a legal battle. This was going to be personal. I spent the morning inspecting the dam. It had held strong for years, built with solid concrete, reinforced steel, and a drainage system I'd designed myself to control the flow. But I knew exactly what to do to weaken it, not to destroy it entirely, just to let the water surge out fast and hard. Enough to teach them a lesson. By noon, I'd set everything in place. The subdivision was alive with activity. Kids rode bikes down my old trail, now paved into a street with cheerful names like Maple Loop and Creekside Lane. Couples sipped coffee on porches that sat where my wildflowers used to grow. And at the center of it all, in front of the white HOA office that looked absurdly like a tiny courthouse, stood Karen, clipboard in hand, barking orders at 2 landscapers about proper lawn edging. I parked my truck right in front of her. The second she saw me, her face twisted. "You again," she snapped, marching toward me like she owned the ground under her heels. "Sir, I told you yesterday, this is a private." I held up the deed, my name in bold black ink at the top. "This says different," I said flatly. "Every inch of this land is mine. Always has been. You've got about 35 houses sitting on stolen ground." For a moment, she froze. Just a moment, then her lips curled into a tight smile. "That's impossible. We filed every permit with the county. The board handled everything legally. If you think otherwise, you'll have to." "Lady," I interrupted, stepping closer, "you didn't even know the creek that feeds your shiny little lake runs straight through my property. You didn't know there's a dam upstream holding back thousands of gallons of water. And you sure as hell didn't know that I control it." Her smile faltered then, just a flicker. "You're bluffing," she said, but her voice was thinner now, strained. I didn't say another word. I just turned, climbed back into my truck, and drove up the ridge road toward the dam. I could feel her eyes burning into my back the whole way, could almost hear her shrieking into her phone the second I was out of sight. The air grew heavy as I climbed the hill, the storm clouds gathering in the distance like they were in on the plan. At the dam, the water lapped against the concrete wall, calm and unsuspecting. I took one long, steadying breath, then loosened the main release valve. Not all the way, just enough to let the water surge. The roar started almost immediately. From the ridge, I watched the creek swell, rushing faster, louder, until it spilled over its banks and raced downhill toward the neighborhood. Within minutes, the peaceful streets of Willow Creek turned into chaos. Water flooded the manicured lawns first, then surged into the streets, sweeping away trash cans, mailboxes, even one of those ridiculous pink lawn flamingos. Residents scrambled, shouting, trying to move cars, dragging patio furniture inside. Kids screamed as their bikes were carried down the road like twigs in a current. And at the center of it all stood Karen, drenched to the bone, mascara streaking down her cheeks, shouting orders nobody was listening to. I leaned against the railing of the dam and watched, a grim satisfaction settling deep in my chest. It wasn't enough to destroy their homes, I'd been careful about that. But it was enough to make them understand. Enough to remind them that this land didn't belong to them. That no HOA rule or county permit could erase my name from the deed. By the time the water level dropped and the current slowed, the sun was dipping low again, casting an orange glow over the soaked streets. The neighborhood was quiet now, stunned, people huddled on porches or in their cars, whispering and staring up toward the ridge where they knew I'd been. That evening, there was a knock at my cabin door. I opened it to find Karen standing there, soaked clothes replaced with a stiff blazer, her hair perfectly styled again, but her eyes, different. No smugness, no condescension, just fear, and something that looked an awful lot like respect. We didn't know," she said, her voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. "The county records, they said the land was clear. Please, we need to talk. Maybe we can come to an agreement." I studied her for a long moment, letting the silence stretch until she shifted nervously. Then I stepped aside. "Fine," I said, "but understand this, you built your dream on my ground. You follow my terms, or you pack up and leave. That dam stays in my control. You don't touch it, you don't even look at it, unless I say so." "Clear," she nodded quickly, clutching her clipboard like a lifeline. As she turned to leave, I added, "And Karen, next time you think about building on someone else's land without asking, remember what water can do." The next morning, the HOA board came to me with contracts, apologies, and offers of compensation that would make a banker blush. I didn't sign a single thing. Not yet. I wanted them to sweat, to remember that their perfect little neighborhood existed because I allowed it. From then on, every car that drove through Willow Creek slowed near my cabin. Every neighbor waved, some out of respect, others out of fear. And every time I walked down that road, past their identical houses and their manicured lawns, they remembered. Because in Willow Creek, there was no HOA rulebook that could rewrite one simple truth. The land was mine. And now, they knew it.